What's up guys, Tech and Tyler, and today we are going to be doing a reassembly of a clock that I have had now for at least a few years. It's been a while since that I've had this clock, and when I got it, it did work, and it's not in bad condition at all. For the age of it and what type of clock it is, it's overall in really, really good shape. But the biggest problem was the fact that the motor in it had, well, the whole thing had cloth wiring in it, but the motor, it did work, but unfortunately the cloth wire on the motor had deteriorated too much, and I couldn't repair it because the wire leads into the copper coil for the magnet to make it, for the magnetic circuit to work in the motor. It was too far into the motor, and I tried to repair it recently, and it didn't. I got it to work, but after taking it apart, it kind of broke it. So me doing that didn't really fix it. Unfortunately, it just kind of made it to where it was just no good anymore. Unfortunately, because these motors are not really meant to be taken apart, so I never really got around to ordering a motor until recently. That's why I tried to repair the one I had, because I wanted to keep the original motor in it because it was in really good shape, which I will show you the difference between this one I got and the one that was in it. But also the motors are just, they're pricey too. Like a whole motor or a mechanism for this clock is like $100. Sometimes you can find them for like 40 or so dollars. It just kind of depends, but like I've seen them online like brand new or like refabbed ones for like $100, and I'm like, I don't really want to spend that on just, a motor when that's all I needed was a motor. So I got lucky and recently found a motor, and so I got that in and tested it and had it running for a couple hours just to make sure it works, and it works perfectly. And it's the exact same motor that was in it, just newer, because these motors are pretty common apparently. Back at the time when I was trying to find one, they weren't as common, but now I think they're starting to become more common. Possibly, I could be wrong, but that's just what I think. But the clock that I bought the motor for, or that we were going to be reassembling, is this. Now, this is a 1940s era Lackner neo or neon glow clock, and when I saw these online before, I always thought these were really cool clocks just because the design of it is very simple, but it's very, very nice looking at the same time. And usually, when you see these clocks, they are supposed to be lit up green because they're supposed to have like a neon bulb inside of it. And so there's like a bulb in this column and a bulb in this column. Well, when I bought the clock, it had, I think, the cord cut on it, I believe, when I got it, so it was untested when I bought it. So the seller or whoever I bought it from a couple years back didn't know if it worked or not, so it was an untested unit, and I got it for a good price, because these can kind of be a little pricey, these clocks. So the price I paid for it was a pretty good price for how good the condition of it is, especially with the glass panel with the numbers on it, which I'll show in more detail. But if I put my hand behind it, you can see that the numbers of this are in immaculate condition. The paint's not chipping off of it, they're not scratched off. The only minor flaw is this little dot in the middle of it right here where the hands for the clock have touched it, and that's due to it moving, but also due to the fact that the backing piece, which is right over here, it's a piece of metal with like a piece of fabric on the front of it, and that piece of fabric had kind of fallen off, and I think it kind of pushed the mechanism a little bit too close to the glass because it's kind of tight. So I'm gonna see if I can scrape that off and get it to where it's not there, but I think just it might end up like being too and like scratched into the glass, unfortunately. But the fact that the glass is in good shape, it's original, it's not broken, that's a plus. And the mechanism and everything that I have for it is all still original, which is a big plus too. But the motor that was inside of it, like I said, it was in really, really good condition. Like, this is the motor. It's super clean looking. It's not tarnished or anything. It's so shiny and it's in such good shape. But like I said, these aren't meant to come apart. So when I took this half and separated it, it kind of screwed it up, unfortunately. And I had to repair this. And like I said, I repaired it, but it's not the greatest repair because I couldn't get this out or get too far into replacing it. And like I said, these are supposed to be sealed. Excuse me. You're not supposed to be able to take these out and repair them, I guess. Or they're kind of hard to repair. So like I got it to work, but something's still goofy in it. I might try to come back and see if I can repair this, but if I can find these for a good price, I'll just buy replacements and not worry about this. But I just wanted to show how clean this is, though. And like I said, this was the original one, so I wanted to try to keep the original one in it. It doesn't have a date. Actually, no, it does have a date, which is kind of interesting. So if I'm looking at this right, it says 4-52, so, you know, the 4th month of 1952, which, if that's the case, is kind of interesting because this clock is from the 40s. So I'm kind of wondering if somebody had already put a different motor in it to begin with, because this clock here, alone, like this is the gear set for the clock, and as you can see, it has a date of 1942 on there. So I believe that is definitely original to this clock, because most of these clocks, when you look them up, they say they're from about the 40s. So it could be possible that somebody put a different motor in it at the time. Maybe the one that was in it went bad, so they went ahead and replaced it. Not too sure. Or it could just be maybe it was made later on, but either way, I'm not too sure. But all I know is that this is from the 40s. And so this is the replacement motor I got for it. It's the exact same thing because these have a code on them, which the other motor has a code of, if I can grab it really quickly, this is a model 610, 110 volt, 60 cycle, 3 watt, 1 RPM motor. And that's what I got because I came across a good deal on one. So this one obviously is not as shiny, but the wires in it are, good. They're not dry rotted and they're perfectly fine. And like I said, I tested this and it works. So this one is the same thing though. It's a 610, 110 volt, 60 cycle, 3 watt, 1 RPM motor. So it's the correct motor to go in it, and I'm really happy that I finally got around to buying a replacement for this because I want to finish this project. Now, another thing about this clock that is quite interesting is the lights in it, like I said. So, for example, let me grab this thing real quick. So, I might seem a little quieter if the microphone doesn't pick it up too well. But anyway, so the lighting portion of this clock is interesting, like I said. It's a Lackner branded clock, which if I grab the cover here, not lose all the screws, let me dump these out real quick and put them right here. So if I show the back plate, it says Lackner Neon Glow Clock. And so, like I said, most of these clocks that you see have green lights in them. Or at least every time that I've come across a Lackner Neon Glow Clock, they're always lit up green. So, like I said, there's a light in this column and a light in this column. So what I'm assuming is how it works, because you cannot find pictures of it online at all, is they must put two, like taller type of I would say probably at least maybe somewhere about that big. I'm not too sure. Maybe it fills up the whole thing, but if you look inside of here, you can see where the wood is kind of like gotten kind of warm and it's turned white. So I'm kind of wondering if it takes up the whole thing or it goes halfway. I'm not too sure. There's no pictures of it, and no one's ever made a video on it to really kind of go over these or talk about them much, at least from what I know. But the bulbs that were in it, like, as I believe when I got this, it had no bulbs in it, or if it did, they were just normal, like nightlight bulbs, the C7 clear bulbs. And I've noticed that online, the clocks that are like these that actually have the bulbs in them still go for a pretty high price. But Most of the ones you see online also that are being sold are still lit up, but they're not green. They're lit up just like, like a normal white light. And it's kind of funny because they list it as white neon, and that is very incorrect and false. If you look at the pictures of the clocks, usually they're kind of like half taken apart, or someone's taken the bottom off, or they're missing screws. And I saw one recently where the bottom plate was taken off and there was a gap you could see in it at the light, and it's just a normal nightlight bulb, a normal, C7 bulb. So it's funny that, and I get that people aren't gonna, know what it is or understand it. They're just selling it. But it's kind of funny that they list it as white neon when it's not neon at all. The neon bulbs are not inside of it. So, and I wish I could find a picture. Maybe somebody could help me in the comments, possibly on like a link, or just have some knowledge on the bulbs that would originally been in here, because I actually have a turntable that I have gotten recently from a person who was selling just a big bulk of like hi-fi equipment for a good price. And I got a turntable that's an old Sony one, which I'll make a video on that once I finish repairing it and talk about it, because it's a really unique turntable. But that has this cool like neon bulb in the bottom of it that shines on little mirrors to give you, um the cycle reading for like the speeds for the 33 and the 45 RPM, and it spins, and you see if it's, if it wiggles like on the little dots on the lines, that it's, not the right speed, that type of thing. Well, it has a little bulb in it that's neon that lights that up, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. It's just a bulb. So I'm kind of wondering if it's the same thing for this, if it's, one of those types of like little neon bulbs. So unless I figure out what kind of bulb it was originally in it, what I've done is I've just put, some LED bulbs in it, because that's the best way to go for this clock, because I don't want to put anything that's going to overheat it. So a while back I ended up coming across some of these, which I'm going to change them, because these are, when they sit in it, they're a little short. They kind of put all the light mostly down here, and I want a little taller just to kind of light it up a bit more. But I need to find some that are like the tubular ones, but they're not super high wattage and super bright. But these work pretty good. But the way how the lights work is they just, on the back of this clock, there's a spot that the cord comes out, and there's also a spot where a switch is on it. So like the spot for the cords back here, there's a switch spot here. I don't remember what that other hole right there is for, honestly. I'd have to kind of go back and look at some photos to figure out what that one's for, unless it was just a random hole for to let maybe some of the heat of the lights out, possibly. But how this works though is it just, you have a switch on the back to turn off and on the lights, and then there's just wires that jump from this candelabra base to this candelabra base and lights up the lights in it. And this was all, cloth wire, so I had to rip it all out because it was all dry rotted pretty badly. Same with the switch that was in it, unfortunately. So I'm gonna have to put a new switch in it. But yeah, I just think it's kind of funny though that it gets listed as white neon when it's clearly not white neon. And I hope that people aren't spending the money on it, that it, spending too much money on these that are, way more than it's valued at, just because of the fact that, if it had the original bulbs, I get it would be worth more money. But if it doesn't, then it's not, if it doesn't have the original bulbs, it's, not as, I feel like, valuable, just because of the fact that it's, at that point it's just technically a light up clock. But it's still a neat clock though. But anyway, I've ranted on a lot about this clock. But the main purpose is now that since I finally have the new motor, I can finally go ahead and start putting this clock back together. So I, like I said, finally got this motor in. So now I can finally put everything back together on this clock and get it all working again, so I can be done with this project finally. So the motor just butts up, and you got to make sure the teeth of the gear are touching inside of it, but that just butts up to here, to the back of this metal plate. Once that's on there, there's 4 screws on it that have to be put back in, which hopefully I have all 4 of these screws still here, and it looks like I have 3 out of the 4, so I wonder where the rest of those went. There's also some screws. I think I have all the rest of the screws, because you got to have the screws for the motor mount to mount the motor back onto the plate. You also have to have the screws that mount the actual gear assembly to the back of this, which then also attaches to the back of this to sandwich everything together. And then this is just to cover it up so you don't see those screws. And I'm going to double-sided tape this back on, just so that way it's, you know, nice and firm onto there, so that the arms don't rub or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this motor mounted onto this back plate with these small flathead screws. So let me get that mounted onto here and I'll bring you right back. Okay, and so now I have the motor attached back onto the gear assembly, which I am unfortunately missing this screw right here. That's like one of these little mini flathead machine screws. I'm actually realized I'm missing a few screws, so I'll have to go back and look to see what those are for. Also, I did just remember actually what this hole on the back of here was for. So since this motor assembly just kind of sits back here, the wires for the motor actually are what go down into that hole there, because of the fact that this sits back here like this. Those wires have to go through this little hole into the back there. So that's another reason why I wanted to get a replacement, because of them being dry rotted and going into that hole. It wasn't safe. So now with it being able to, you know, they're good flexible wires, I can just pop them in there and don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to tape them or nothing, because there's nothing wrong with these wires. I'm just going to, you know, go right from underneath of this cover right into that hole, no problem. So this clock also is really easy to take apart. There's only like 4 screws in the bottom, which I got to be careful taking this apart because of this piece of glass here. I do not want to break this piece of glass, because like I said, it's in great condition. So I'm going to set this up here where it's nice and safe, because I got to wipe it off and clean it. But yeah, this whole frame for this kind of just comes apart almost like a puzzle. I don't think it's supposed to. I think either it might supposed to be, or I think either it had glue in it, it all came apart. But either way, I've thought about gluing it, but I think I'm just going to leave it, because I don't want to glue it, and then, you know, if I have to work on it, it'd be impossible. But as you can see inside of the column here, that column is open all the way up to the top up here. So that's why I want to get some taller bulbs, because with these bulbs here, it's only going to go, you know, so far up into that column. So, and I plan on getting some green LEDs to put in it, just to kind of give it that look of what, you know, the clock would have looked like originally. But for now, I'm just going to keep the white lights, because I got to order some of the green ones. But now that we have this motor assembly onto here, now what I can do is take this, which the cover on the back here, I have to put, if I remember where I set it down at, there is a gasket that goes on the back of this to keep it all sandwiched together. Just here it is. Okay, I found it. So this gasket right here, because there's 2 of them, there's this one and then there's the one on the back of the actual metal plate sitting over right here. So this sits on it like this, and you got to take the motor assembly, and I'm going to feed the wires through the hole in the bottom right here. After being a little stubborn. But once I get those fed through there, the motor assembly will sit in it like this. But you can't just push this in all the way, because it will feel like it's getting stuck in here. And the reason why is because, like I said, you got to have this gasket on the actual clock itself. So technically I need to pull this back out, And as you can see from the leftover material left on this cover, that the side that was the part on the back of it was this because of the indent. So I'm going to put this back onto there. I'm going to fish the wires back through here. And then once I get that fished through the back there, I can... wait a minute. My bad. I forgot this is kind of a weird setup for this clock, so I have to do it in a... Unless it was like that. I don't know, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've fiddled with this clock, so give me 1 second and I'll bring you back after I figure this out. Okay, so that took a couple minutes figuring it out, but I finally figured out how it went back together, or at least how I think it goes back together. So the motor assembly has to pop into this because there's these little indents in the side of it. So the framing of it pops into there, and then you just set the motor into the little grooves for the arms there on top of this gasket, which, as you can see, the remnants of that gasket is for this one. So then that just sits on top of there, and then also sits over top of that gasket. So it all squishes it together, which then allows it to keep that gap space for the spindle for the arms of the clock, so it doesn't stick out too far. So it kind of helps it as keeping that gap. So now what I can do, which I also do need to still fix something on this clock also, so I'm going to have to retake it apart, but it's a good thing to figure out how it went back together so I know for when I screw it back onto the bracket. But a couple things I need to do real quick though before I also put it back together is I need to oil these gears in it because they are kind of dry and this is a little stiff to spin to set the time. But also I need to fix this, which is the arm to adjust the time. All of the threads are gone, so I'm going to try to see if I can re-tap this to get some threads on it so I can put like a nut on the end of it so I can have something to at least turn to set the time. So I'm going to oil this, try to fix that, and then I'll bring you back once I got that finished and put it back together onto this and get this all screwed together. Okay, so now I have the motor and the gear assembly and the cover with the plate all reconnected now. I have all of the bolts and nuts attached and it's all tightened down. So now next what I need to do is clean this up a bit, get the surface a little prepped before I put the double-sided tape on it so I can put this down on here. And I need to give this a wipe off, and I'm going to see if I can try to color in these two little spots here with just a little bit of like brown marker or something just to kind of hide those little blemishes a little bit. But I also need to, I would like to also, before I continue with this, to try to find the rest of the screws. So I think I'm going to stop here on this project, and I'm going to have to make a part 2 when I can find the other screws or find some screws that will be compatible with this, because I still need to go through, clean it up a bit, get all the pieces together. But this is part 1 of 2 parts of this clock. So far so good. Unfortunately, that little spindle here for the time adjustment, I tried to get threads back on it with an idea I had and it didn't work, unfortunately. So what I'm going to have to do is find something to stick on there, and I'll probably have to just glue it in order to be able to change the time, because I do not have anything that fits it besides some small nuts. So I might have to just put a nut on there and super glue it to get it on there. But I'll come up with something before part 2. But yeah, so this will conclude part 1, so stick around for part 2, and thank you for watching, and until next time, thank you.